right. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's having themselves a fantastic Thursday afternoon. How did everyone's trading days end up here today? Love that, Bijou. That's the perfect answer. Welcome. Good, Shirley. Appreciate that. That's good. Mostly green's a great answer too. Pretty choppy day in the end, right? Pretty bouncy. Did a pretty good job managing that, I think, today. How's everyone else feeling this Thursday? Hey, Darren, welcome back. Great to hear that. Fantastic. Eventually, immigration sorted it out. That's great to hear. Hey, welcome to the game, Shirley. Never ends. That cycle never ends. You could have done something better today, Andrew. What would you have done? So, like, if I were to challenge you, what did you actually learn today? What would you say? What would be the answer? Do you think the managing drawdown kind of discussion we did on Tuesday helped? Good, amazing. So it sounds like we have a few people here, which is fantastic. Appreciate you all for spending your Thursday evenings with me in the YouTube stream here. So thank you very much for everyone tuning in. Going to open up the floor to questions for the group. So don't have a set topic in mind here today. We'll try to keep our set topics to like Tuesdays, and then kind of open up the floor here to everything else. So whoever wants to fire off the first question, let's get after it, and let's kick this thing off. Hey, how's it going, David? So all I know, Mandy, right, is like I wouldn't hold that against yourself too much, right? Because sometimes I'm going to take trades and sometimes I'm going to miss trades, and I'm not always going to be correct on those decisions. In fact, I'm not any smarter or any dumber than you. Well, I might be dumber if you guys heard my sunset or sunrise answer the other day, but all I do, right, is I'm comfortable with the variance of it, right? So, if I miss a trade, if I take a trade, if I make a mistake or I don't make a mistake, a $300 loss, hey, no worries, right? That can be something that like you can very easily recover. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about that too much. I would just study, okay, why did you feel like you wanted to take that decision, even though I decided I didn't? And I think that might give you like a psychological starting point over where that pressure is coming from, right? So answer that why, And if you can find a better counterbalance to it, I think you'll be in a much calmer place. Yeah, well, slippage is unfortunately a reality in volatile markets, right? You know, if you don't have a huge amount of decision in either direction, then you can get some pretty nasty slippage. That can for sure happen. We have a market that was just extremely volatile, right? And now a decent amount of liquidity has sort of been pulled at these highs. So not too surprising. Now, you know, still trading NQ or ES, you wouldn't expect 20 points of slippage here necessarily. That would be a little bit excessive, but getting 3 or 4 points, I think is pretty reasonable. So at what point do I look at a choppy market and say it's not worth my time? Good question. I think chop is a little bit relative, right? Because like if I'm looking back at the last like 6 months of price action, you know, we've been pretty choppy in that entire period. And it's been some of my best trading that I've had in a very long time, right? Or it's been a very productive trading period for me. And you know, a lot of people would say that that's choppy. You'll get people who say it's choppy when it's trending. You'll get people to say it's choppy when it's choppy. So whatever it is, I think that ends up being an adjective that is less objective maybe than the phrasing we want to give it, or the power that we maybe give it when we use that language. So what I would say is that question actually more comes down to how much mental capital I have. So I can't necessarily, especially in the moment, always very clearly define that the market is too choppy or that it's, you know, screwing me up or whatever it might be. I usually can't do that. What I can do objectively is decide when my psychology feels like it's taken that mental toll, right? Where, you know, I've been chopped out mentally, you know, that can happen sometimes after one trade, right? If I start the day off with low mental capital, that can sometimes happen after 10 trades, but the pattern of feelings is generally the same. So at least for myself, that means like not really wanting to accept a loss, not necessarily in like not accepting my stop losses, but I'll try like the same thesis 3 times in really quick succession, stuff like that. I'll get faked out on all of them. Another thing that will kind of pay for my mental capital is being up nicely green, then seeing that win become a loss. Those always kind of chop up my mental capital. And so when I start to feel those sensations or start to get those triggers, that's probably my cue to kind of pack it in and call it a day. So I think it's just a self-reflection thing. And if I'm trading well, then choppy markets give me opportunities in both directions. If I'm trading poorly, choppy markets, when they're objectively choppy, you know, kind of tear me up a little bit. And that, I think that's just lazy language that we all use as traders. But for me, I can only objectively assess my psychology and how controlled I feel based on how the market is going, and then I go from there. In general, like, you know, this week I took Tuesday, Wednesday off to focus on some tech problems, and that's like generally feels like a pretty rare occurrence. Like, it's not what I would like to do. I don't generally like to take days off where I'm just simply not watching the market. That could be a big contributing factor to consistent burnout, because I think we don't realize how intense or how stressful this pursuit can be until you take a little break. So there's always a fine line or a balance to walk there, and you got to answer that internally more than like looking for some market measure. So Shirley, would define the setups, right? So what are the setups to the upside? What are the setups to the downside? And what are the reversal setups? So dealing with management of multiple prop firm accounts and trade copier. If you have 20 prop accounts, 50s, 100s, 150s, would you trade more 10 at lower risk or 2 to 3 at higher risk? I mean, I would trade everything the most conservatively I can, right? So if I have 20 accounts, that's so much leverage, even if they're 20, 50Ks, even if it's 20, 100Ks. So just trading one contract times 20, like if that isn't enough money, then you have a spending problem, not a trading problem, right? So I would think that that's more than enough, with getting more accounts or, having more leverage. You make it easier to survive basically any drawdown periods by being able to spread out that risk across multiple accounts. So in general, the more leverage you add, you should try to de-risk all of your sizing. Oh, surely that's the easiest decision in the world, right? Got your green day and you have a string of evidence to say that, hey, when I'm up 3R, I'm up 2R, all I do is lose money. So at some point, you got to decide that you want to stop playing games where you're expected to lose. So have yourself a hard cutoff, right? Set number of decisions, like a walk away number. But like here's the challenge I would give for you, right? Trading is really fun. Don't get me wrong. It is. It's one of my favorite things I do in this world. But if I make all this money trading and I have all this freedom and I have all this free will to do what I want, wouldn't it be a waste of time for me to spend all that extra energy and effort just staring at screens on my computer? Right? Like, wouldn't you regret that? Stuck. So if you've got evidence that you make more doing less and you can unlock more freedom in your life, why wouldn't you want to do that? Right? Don't trick yourself into thinking that more trades equals more profits. It's not the case, right? You don't have the evidence to indicate that. And if you're making $1,500, $1,500 and $1,500, how many of those do you need, right, before you're feeling pretty good about how much you're making? And then if you don't optimize for that freedom first, it'll be really hard to get out of that cycle. I mean, so give me an example, Bijou, because I'm a little bit confused by your framing there. So let's say that you got in at 26,487 and your stop loss was 77. Are you saying that you got filled at 67? Okay, but slippage isn't the difference between your entry price and your exit, right? Slippage is the difference between your stop loss and your exit in this circumstance, right? So those are the two variables we need to know. In general, right? If you have inconsistent execution or you have like you're getting variables that you don't like, the option is to size down, right? Like that's your move to de-risk. The less contracts, less volume you have, the less slippage you're going to experience, right? Because it's easier to get filled one contract than it is 10. Again, I'd be surprised to see 10 points of slippage on any stop loss. Okay. So you have 12 points of risk, already more than you're supposed to. And then your stop loss is what? Your stop loss is 387. And then when you get stopped out, what's the fill price? Let's stack up a few questions here while we wait. What else we got? So Bijou waiting. What's your exit price then? No, nothing. Okay, you're not answering the question, Bijou, right? So if you get stopped out and your stop loss is at 387, what's your fill price on your stop loss? What you're describing is not slippage. I wouldn't say it's work less necessarily, Shirley, right? But it's redefining what working is as a trader. So, the actual trading part of my job is only a very small part of what my daily responsibility is, right? My responsibility is to basically ask myself, was it me? Was it my strategy? Was it the market, right? And if I study those things properly, that should take up as much time as my trading, if not more. So that's more what your job is. And then trading is kind of like the data collection in between doing that daily studying. So just because I trade for 90 minutes a day doesn't mean that I just go get drunk rest of the day and totally do nothing, right? There's a big point of self-reflection. There's a analysis. There's I almost view it as being like a pro athlete where you need to take care of all the other variables, right? So you got to take care of your health. You got to take care of your fitness. You got to eat well. You got to sleep well. You got to do your recovery, right? You got to focus on your mentality. All these little variables become effectively what your job becomes. And that makes it easier to maintain that mental capital when you're trading. So good question, Andrew. Define chasing an entry versus making an adjustment because you missed an entry. So let's say, that's a good example here. We'll just pretend this one. Okay, so let's say that my entry or my setup was like this. Right, stop loss at 370, reference price here. Call it 380. Okay, and then fine, I get a fill at 378 and you don't get a fill. And now price is at 388. If you click submit here at 388 and you keep your risk at 370, then you're chasing this, right? You've doubled up the acceptable amount of risk that you're willing to take. And now fundamentally, you're going to make less when we're correct, and you're going to lose more when we're wrong. So you've gone from having kind of asymmetric upside to basically destroying that ratio. So for me, a chased entry by default is one where I don't get better than the reference price. So that's what the reference price is there for. It gives me an objective measure. Good entry equals better. Chased entry equals worse. So that's the starting point, right? If I then miss the move and couldn't get it on the 3-min and it's still giving me that strength, well, if I then reset on that next candle and I go through that same process and now my stop loss is at 400 and my reference price is 410 and then I get in at 406.50, it's not a chase, right? Because again, you satisfy those criteria, you have a logical stop loss, and you can repeat that process. And you basically just cycle through the time frame. So if you don't get it then on the 3, you switch to it on the 5. If you don't get it on the 5, right, you switch to the 10 or you switch to the 2, whatever it is. So it's just about resetting that process. So chasing would mean that you exceed your risk tolerance and you get a price that is worse than the reference price. Not chasing would mean that you reset on the next candle or it's pulled back into your reference price or better. And then you can just reset that right on alternative timeframes. You actually saw this a lot today for me, right? There were a couple trades we were looking at on like the 2-min and couldn't quite get the move that I wanted. So instead of chasing that entry, I just switched to the 3-min and basically just reset that process, right? So instead of then chasing an entry on the 2, just reset, let it set back up on the 3, and then enter there. So reference price, right? It's called that for a reason. One, it's a reference for if I got a good entry or not, right? Better than the reference price, good entry. Worse than the reference price, bad entry. It's always 10 points away from my stop loss. So that keeps it really, really binary, right? Either my risk is more than 10 points or it's less than 10 points. Good, right? Or 10 points or less. So, okay, that makes it really simple. And then if I get outside of that, I have an objective measure and a decision process basically to get out of that position. Now, it's easier said than done. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I shouldn't. But that's it, right? So if I can't trust myself to get a disciplined entry, I can't trust myself to hold on to a winning trade properly, got to get out. And you just give yourself these feedback loops and these easy decisions when you effectively create like binaries, right? Yes, no statements. We talk about this all the time, but you create an entry, good entry, bad entry, becomes really easy. Anything that's objectively a bad entry, that starts to get into the chasing category. Yeah, see, that's 100% chasing, David. And it's just trying to justify it later on. But what's the problem with that isn't that you don't make money. It's that you now put your stop loss at a point where your idea doesn't get invalidated, right? So if we're wrong without, or if we get stopped out without actually being wrong on our thesis, makes it pretty easy to like just revenge trade and try to make it back and do whatever. And so I think that ends up being a little bit of a curse, and you just end up capping a lot of your gains unnecessarily. Any other questions about execution? I think execution is like probably the most underrated thing about trading. So these are good questions. What else we got? And just to add to that, right? With slippage, slippage tends to get exaggerated when you're chasing a move, right? So as price is going away from your entry zone and you click submit, you're going to get a fill even worse, right, than what you thought. Whereas if you click it as it's moving towards your stop loss, you're going to get a much more consistent fill on your entries. So that would be the thing to focus on, almost like the thought you want to have in your head is clicking submit at the moment where the trade feels scariest. I know that sounds a little bit silly, and we talk about, trying to make decisions where we're feeling our calmest. But the moment where, yeah, price action feels the least likely often is generally our anti-signal to go in. My second most profitable position, David, is sitting on hands, right? It's my second most profitable position. Don't take it for granted. Does everyone have a good understanding of all the features on the DTR trading website? How's everyone's DTR website knowledge? Everyone kind of know all the core features? Or would a rundown be helpful? All right, so let's start at the, let me bring it up here. Okay. All right, everyone can see my screen here now, correct? All right, so starting point, right? You have your dashboard, gives you all your stats, average win, average loss, average size win, right? Average size loss. Pretty self-explanatory there. Then we have the social features, right? So the leaderboard, calendar, fine. The next kind of tab here is the trades tab. So this is where you can look at individual trades. You can look at them in more detail. Where this is really helpful is being able to replay your entries and your exits. So you take your trade, you find the time frame that you traded it on, you click replay, crank this up to 10x, and then you can watch back, how price action behaved, add entry, add exit, right? How the chart looked like. And if you're finding yourself early on your entries or late on your entries, this is a great tool because it kind of re-simulates what that price action or behavior was. So this is a great starting point here if you're looking to refine your entries or your exits. Again, it shows you your green line, right, where your trade started or where your trade closed. And then you can see, how long after your exit did you actually make the right decision? Did you make a wrong decision? Et cetera, et cetera. So this is a tool that I like to use a lot, right? Because it kind of replicates that feeling that you get inside a position that maybe TradingView doesn't. And so this is a fantastic little feature. The next thing here, right, is your trading statistics. So you got, more detailed versions of some of your stats. So you get your average, risk reward ratio, long win rate, short win rate. You can get breakdown, more specific days, right? Your stats, loss probabilities, fine, whatever. Obviously the import tab here where you import your trades. We've got all the courses, right, where you got to complete one to go on to another. So very similar, right? And some of these videos have quizzes, AI generated quizzes. Next, here's the library. So you got every video every key video here. The next is the TradingView indicator. So if you want to use TradingView and my setup, you can launch it here. You can also copy, right, the indicator if you want to create something custom or add it to a different platform. And I think this is where most people maybe miss out on a lot of the tools. So the AI coach, I think, is the thing that most people should be using about 10 times more than they currently are. what this is it's basically an AI chatbot that has been exclusively trained on my live streams, courses, and the one-on-one coaching calls. So you can ask the AI coach here effectively anything, and it's going to pull, categorize, and take every single word that I've ever said on stream and give you a really reasonable answer over what you're looking at. So if I was to say, something like, what's a good question here that we had today? How do I avoid slippage, right? Type that in. Give it a second. Oh, try again. Great demo. Strange. Okay, well, that's an error we have to fix. Quite embarrassing. But I'll get this fixed here. But the whole goal is it's, supposed to answer any questions. And then performance analysis, not working quite as expected. Fine. And we have our community features. So we have our daily debriefs where people can post their trades, get feedback, the group chats, and the streams, right? So we got a lot of stuff there that everyone can go. It might just be overloaded or something. I'll check that in a moment. So the risk management tool, Peters or Andrew, it should be sending you emails when you're making trading decisions that are suboptimal. Please send me an email after to backoffice@daytraderfunding.com, and we'll make sure that everything is configured correctly. It's really weird because I was using the chat earlier. It's quite strange. Well, I think the most valuable is the one that replays your entries and your exits, right? Like that's the thing that you can't really easily replicate in any other trading tool. So I would say of like the proprietary things that I've made, that's the one that is for sure the most useful. And then from there, it's just literally whatever you have in your journal, right? Like that's where the reflection comes from. So your technical things you can fix by focusing on like your entries and your exits. What could you have done differently? The other stuff is all self-reflection. There's not really a certain amount of tools that will fix those problems. Right. So it's like the more awareness you have over what's broken, the easier it is to fix. That's really the whole objective of the website, right? That and to avoid all the Discord scammers. What else we got here, team? Any other questions? in the trades tab, Shirley, in the trades tab, click trades. And then each individual trade has an eyeball. You click that eyeball, it brings up the replay function. What else we got here, team? We've only done 35 minutes. We can easily do a few more. What else we got? It's for whatever trades you upload. It's the ones that you made mistakes on, right, Dave? So there's no like you want to study every trade you take, right? Did I behave how I wanted to behave on this? Yes, no. Was that behavior correct? Yes, no. What could I have done differently? Don't need to put more stock into one trade or the other. They're all equally weighted. They're all important. And then when you build up enough of a sample size and you have a lot of data, well, then eventually you can go back and you can look, okay, what are the setups of the trades where I've got patterns, right? Where, hey, I went on tilt on this trade and I didn't like it. What was the other trade that I went on tilt? What did that look like? Right? And you can start to stack up that evidence that way. But you study every one. It's like asking what pages of a book do you read? You read all of them. What else we got? Any other questions here, team? FYI, guys, right? I think I mentioned this a few days ago, but 101 calendar is open as well. That's back to live or back to open. For those who don't want to air any dirty laundry. %, Bijou, yeah. If I wasn't happy with the risk, right? If I'm not happy with the risk once I've entered a trade, why was I happy with the risk before I entered the trade, right? Those two concepts have to be in unison. So I have a set of rules on how I'm supposed to behave post-entry. I'm supposed to wait for that candle to close. And until that decision happens, I'm willing to risk my stop loss. That's always been the case, always will be. Got to find that balance between letting things breathe and trusting my thesis. You know, in reality, yeah, if I'm not happy losing, my 10 points or whatever it is, I shouldn't have taken that trade. And if now I'm up 5 points and I don't want to lose that 10, then I probably didn't want to lose that 10 to begin with. And now it's just more obvious. There's a weird contradiction with traders a lot of the time where they trust that their losers will become winners and that their winners will become losers. And that mindset keeps you in the Stone Age as a trader. It's kind of like that caveman brain that keeps you in place. And we don't need to have that fear. We should have the opposite of that. We should trust that our wins will be wins, and we should trust our thesis. And if we don't, well, we're kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because you just constantly end up taking full-size losses, but never getting any full-sized wins. And when you're prematurely capping your wins at 1 hour, half an hour, or, you know, a fraction of your total risk, you just make life so much more difficult for yourself, because now your win rate's got to be 60%, 70%, 80% just to break even. And that math doesn't really work out for day traders. Yeah, of course. No, this is the time for it. What's up, Norman? Look, guys, my rule for the chat is really simple. Just during the trading day, we want questions to be about the trading, because every question that deviates away from that just ends up being really distracting for everybody. And so when we lose that like flow and intensity in the morning, it's really hard to find it again. And tech issues are the hardest one to deal with at the moment, because there's a conflict of interest, right? Where you want, not maybe conflict, but there's a conflict, right? Where you want an immediate resolution so you can trade. But the only way to get the resolution would mean missing a trade for 200 other people. And so it's just impossible for me to fix those things in those 90 minutes that we're trading. And so try my best to work around the clock to make sure that the other hours of the day, those things are getting fixed. Yeah, so surely we've got a couple, like you're in a batch of tech issues that hopefully we'll have rolled out here today and fixed. But these changes are coming. It's been a very, honestly, a very complicated week in fixing up some things so we can avoid these in the future. I'm doing my best to hopefully have everything out again this evening. But we'll see. You know, we'll work around the clock until it's done. Again, if you have any updates to your tech support ticket, Shirley, please just respond to the email. That'll be the easiest. It's going to be very tough to keep up with the updates from the chat as well. So if you have any updates, please send them there. It's not really up to me, David. I don't have control over those third-party tools. So I can't really answer that question. I'm sure if enough people email Volumetrica and their support that you can find on the charting platform, a connection will get made. Oh, glad you're feeling better, Norman. Happy wishes with your recovery. Not fun. Hopefully they're giving you some good meds. Any other questions, your team? What else we got going on? We are. We're constantly, we have a connection set up and ready to go with TradeC. The problem right now is that their platform is really buggy. So, in my opinion, it's not quite worth releasing to production. So once they stabilize a little bit, we'll get that going for everyone too, and so everyone has more options. So far, so good, Norman. Yeah, today was a really good day. I didn't trade Tuesday, Wednesday. Stuck behind fixing some issues. So yeah, Dave, same issue I gave you last week, right? I have a lot of like fires that are impacting people's ability to trade. Those are my priority in fixing those issues. Once that foundation is really solid and clear, we'll make it so that everyone's trades are auto uploaded to DTR and don't have to worry about it. But it's just a low priority item when, yeah, some people aren't able to trade their accounts or we're having issues with it. So bear with me. I do promise I am working on it. My workday is like 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. So it is coming. It has not been forgotten, but it is a low priority option while we're trying to make sure everything works for everybody. You guys are just lucky that it was a bad ski season here. Nothing else to do besides work. We're getting there. Hopefully this weekend we can do a really steady batch, and we're getting closer and closer every day. I know it can be a little bit frustrating maybe on your guys' end, but the point we're at now is we're basically trying to replicate every tech issue that everyone has gotten, make sure that it's been fixed, and once they have been, then deploying stuff direct to the website or pushing it live to production. So it's taking a little bit longer maybe than we would like, but it's gone to a point where if I don't fix it now properly, it's gonna like overtake me like weeds. I have seen the ski bikes. Not sure if I would ever do that, unfortunately. Oh, it'd be amazing, Norman. Hopefully by then my tech issues are fixed. Yeah, we're close. We're really close. Any other questions, your team? Anything else I don't know, stuck on your guys' minds or anything like that? I got my Dogecoin over here looking for some love and attention. Buddy. I'm going to go final call for questions here, team. Final call for questions. Yeah, main gear. If you could raise a tech support ticket, we'll add it to the bucket list here of things to do. And we'll do our best to get that fixed here this evening. Email back office at daytraderfunding.com. Hey, enjoy, Norman. Have a great night and appreciate you checking in. Recover up quick. You can just send a screenshot or just send a description. That'll be enough. We've got multiple people with the same issues, so it's just a question of getting it deployed and fixed. Again, we have a test that's out, but hasn't been pushed to production here yet. I'm waiting until we have 95% of things ready to go, so don't break anything downstream. You know, the funny thing about being self-employed is, like, I definitely thought that when I went to being self-employed, I'd have a lot more time on my hands. The big motivating factor. And I arguably do. But what's weird about it is what's weird about it for me is I chose to spend all that extra time working on other things that take up more of my time. It's weird how we do that to ourselves. Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like work sometimes, but it's never something I don't want to do. And that's something I'm eternally grateful for. One 100%. Yeah. It's the thing, if you want to be, this goes to anything, I think, in life, but if you want to be in the top 1% of anything, you can't behave like 99% of other people. And most people want a comfortable life. Don't get me wrong, I got all the creature comforts in the world, but it's not easy to roll up your sleeves and work sometimes. I mean, that's what separates people, especially now. Never been easier to win. All right, guys, we're going to go final call here. Final call. All right, team. Well, if you have yourselves a fantastic rest of the evening, or hope you have yourselves a fantastic rest of the evening. If you need anything, please send me an email, backoffice@daytraderfunding.com, if you have any tech issues, and we'll get this all fixed and sorted for everyone as fast as possible. So have yourselves a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you guys in the morning. Peace.